Aloha, everybody. Welcome to our September Happy Hour Book Club. Um, we are, we read for the month of September, we read the book Homecoming, Overcome Fear and Trauma to Reclaim Your Whole Authentic Self by Dr. Thema Bryant. The book looks like this. It is a beautiful, beautiful book, and I'm so excited to share with you today. I'm just going to double check to make sure I'm live. It looks like I am. Wonderful. Okay, so we'll get started. So today's training, my goal, my hope is to help you to understand how to stop feeling disconnected from yourself so that you can reclaim your life, right? And really come back home to your highest and your wisest self, according to her book. And I'm going to sort of outline that for you. So today's training is going to cover and really answer our 5 reflection prompts, which are what is homecoming? What does this concept of homecoming mean, right? And how can we get ourselves back on the path to coming home to our true self? And then really, what are the signs that we are disconnected from ourselves? That's a big one, right? Like it's important to know what to look for and to understand, like, what does that mean to feel disconnected from yourself? And what are the signs of that? We're also going to look at what gets us disconnected, like what are the things that may cause that disconnection? And then what are specific things that you can do to get yourself back on the path to reclaiming yourself and your life, right? And then we'll talk about what are the 3 main types of coping strategies that you can use to survive that disconnection from self? And I'm going to go through in detail what are some of the practices that help us to come home to ourself, according to Dr. Thema Bryant. She is this unbelievably powerful woman who is she herself is a psychologist, she's a professor. She really is this incredible author, but more than that, part of what I think makes her so inspiring, she herself has survived so much trauma. She is a survivor of I believe it was something in Liberia. It was like a civil war in Liberia, and was able to escape. And she is also the president of the American Psychological Association, the APA, or the incoming president. And so she has such an amazing perspective, and she's a minister. And she sort of blends this beautiful world of like psychology and spirituality in a way that I just really loved. And so what I wanted to share with you today is that whoever is, our most engaged participant in today's live is going to win my Radical Self-Love affirmation cards. So that card deck is like a $33 value. And I want to offer that to you, whoever is able to join me live and engage. I really want to offer that as a way to support your homecoming. So I am going to pull up a couple questions here. All right, so the first thing I want to share, like, who am I to be talking about all of this? What is all of this, right? So my name is Sarah Slater Snyder. I am a licensed therapist, LCSW, licensed clinical social worker. I'm a registered yoga teacher and an elite embodiment coach in Hawaii. And I have a private therapy practice. And I started the Women's Wellness Circle in 2021 because I have just seen so many women who are struggling with similar issues: anxiety, depression, insomnia, self-esteem, disconnection from self. Just there have been a lot that I see, and I have found myself having very similar conversations with a lot of my therapy clients. And I wanted to be able to provide a slightly different support to women who are not necessarily in Hawaii, so that I could sort of expand my reach. And so I still have my private therapy practice here. I also now am an elite embodiment coach and do one-to-one coaching, as well as I founded my life-changing Abounding Women program this past year. It's my 90-day program in mastering emotional intelligence and emotional regulation. And through my 15 plus years in the fields of mental health and education, I was a high school counselor for 12 years and a psychology teacher. So through sort of my experience, I've really come to realize the power of integrating neuroscience, psychology, and yoga in a really powerful and innovative way. And this idea of homecoming just resonated so deeply with me because Thema Bryant essentially just articulates so beautifully what I teach my clients about elite embodiment. And I want to just talk about what that is for just a second. Um, so many of my clients struggle with disconnection from themselves, and it can be on multiple levels. We're going to talk about what that may look like for different people. But embodiment literally is about coming home to yourself, right? It is about learning how to literally reclaim your body, to come home into your body, but also your mind, right? And your spirit. So it's literally about sort of aligning and reconnecting body, mind, and spirit and coming home to yourself. And so elite embodiment really just means that we're coming home to our highest self, our wisest self, our sort of, unique, true, authentic, elite self. And I'm here today with you because I have helped so many women and girls to come home to their highest and wisest self using my embodied paradise method, which I developed for exactly this reason, to support women in their homecoming. And so I'm so thrilled to be able to share with you about this book today. I appreciate everybody's flexibility. It's been quite a month for me. I had my family visiting for about 6 weeks here in Hawaii. I'm actually at their vacation rental right now. But I just really am thrilled to be able to share with you. And so let's jump right into our first reflection prompt, which is, what is homecoming, right? And how can we get on the path to coming home to our true self? And I want to just talk a little bit about that idea of homecoming, right? Which really is a return to authentic living based on truth, based on self-acceptance, based on an aligning of action, really with values and with purpose. This is how she describes it. She says, home is more than a physical location. It's an emotional and spiritual place of belonging and appreciation and love, right? She says, as you come home to yourself, you begin breaking free from the mandates of other people. And that is such a thing that I see women struggle with, is that we take on other people's expectations of us, and we feel as though we have to sort of live up to other people's expectations. I work with a lot of women that struggle with people pleasing, with codependency, with perfectionism, right? And homecoming is literally, she says, a decision to live fully. It's a decision to sort of allow your life to have like a full range of emotions. Homecoming is about being honest with yourself and about how being honest with yourself about how you feel, right? So that's why I teach emotional intelligence first. I feel like being able to really understand your emotional experience is key. You guys are going to laugh. As I'm sitting here talking, the TV is on in the room next door. Give me 1 second. I'm going to turn it off. Hold on. Okay. All right. Hang on. Okay. Thanks, everybody. I'm back. I'm back. Okay, here we are. So, all right. So let's talk a little bit about this. Is one of my other favorite quotes I have to read to you about this idea of homecoming, right? So she says, coming home to yourself, that did not work at all. Hang on. 1 second. Why can't I turn this TV off? Okay, hold on. You know what? I'm going to turn this volume down. Hey, sorry, everybody. I don't know what the deal is. Maybe we'll have to just. There we go. Okay, I got it. Thanks for your patience. We're being flexible here, right? We're going with the flow. Okay, so let's come back to this quote, homecoming. She says, coming home to yourself requires slowing down. The gift of homecoming is having a positive regard for your presence, your wellness, and your life. You have nothing to prove to yourself. You can breathe. You can choose sacred stillness. I love how she talks about this. You can stop being controlled by the push of toxic culture and internal unhealed wounds, and you can essentially interrupt the constant rushing of the hustle and bustle of busy work, purposeless, frantic efforts to prove that you are worthy, right? I see this so much, and I myself have struggled with this at times, right? And this is part of why I teach this, because I have been through this. She says, you begin to know in your bones that you are enough. And even when you don't fully believe it, you still give yourself breathing room to be, to heal, to feel, and to come home, right? I just thought that was such a beautiful way that she described that. And she's essentially saying that this idea of homecoming, with a homecoming, you will realize that you are enough, that you are worthy, that you can rest in the truth of that and embrace your learning journey. And what I find is that so many women struggle with these not enough feelings, right? This is like honestly, it is almost a pandemic of this limiting belief that we are not enough because that's what we've been taught by our culture, by society. Um, along with that, she's talking about in this book basically this like busyness that we all feel like we have to be constantly rushing about and constantly keeping ourselves busy, that we value productivity, but we don't see rest as productivity, right? She says, though, to come home to yourself is to choose the radical act of stillness. I sometimes refer to this as settling your spirit. This is getting to a place of inner peace that silences the anxiety and let me read that again. This is getting to a place of inner peace that silences the anxiety that constantly demands your attention. To settle my spirit is deeper than choosing meditation or stillness as an obligation, a new trend, a tool, or even a badge of honor. To settle my spirit is, at my core, to turn off the comparison and competition and to remind myself that I am enough just as I am. Right? So I actually want to give you what I'm going to read to you guys the very first homework that she gives as part of this whole just understanding the concept of homecoming. And it's really beautiful. So I'm going to read to you directly from her book here. So essentially the homework is to close your eyes and to imagine yourself when you are emotionally and spiritually home, right? When you are at home with yourself, what do you look like? What do you sound like? What do you feel like when you are home? So I'm going to ask you to take a moment, close your eyes, and just listen as I read just one paragraph from her book. So she says, I invite you to close your eyes if that feels comfortable for you and imagine yourself when you are emotionally and spiritually home with yourself. What will it look like? How will you breathe, speak, move through life, make decisions, love, manifest your purpose, and rest? When you are home with yourself, what will your laugh sound like? Right? What scent will you wear? What will shift within you and around you? Begin to just mentally, with your eyes closed, get a picture of yourself at home and allow this image to motivate you as you begin this journey, even if the image changes as you continue to read further. And I love this throughout the book. She says, I invite you to place one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly and to tell your heart, mind, body, and spirit, welcome home, right? And so just thought that was really a beautiful exercise. And if you're still there with your eyes closed, take a moment and just tune into when you feel most like yourself. When do you feel most authentic, most at home within your body, your mind, your heart, your spirit, right? I know for me, my experience of home, I have different moments of when I feel most at home. When I am on my yoga mat, when I'm practicing yoga, when I'm meditating, when I'm in the ocean. For me, all are these sort of experiences of coming home to myself. And when I practice embodiment, when I practice and I utilize the elite embodiment practices that I teach, that is a coming home to myself. That's my personal experience. When I am most at home, I feel connected to myself. I feel joyful. I am playful. Um, I'm going to be really honest with you guys. Yesterday was my birthday. I did not, for whatever reason, I was a little disconnected from myself yesterday. Today, I feel much more grounded, much more connected to myself. Um, but for me, it's really apparent when I'm not connected to myself. I just am not, everything feels forced. Everything feels a little bit harder. There's like a grumpiness there. There's like this just sort of discontent. And whereas when I am home with myself, there's grace, there's ease, there's flow. It's really, thank you, Kizzy. Um, she was wishing me happy birthday. I would love to hear from you, Kizzy, or anyone else who either is catching the replay or joining us live. What is your experience of your own homecoming? Like, where do you feel most at home? When do you feel most at home with yourself, right? Um, and I'm also, so as you're thinking about that and sharing, I'm gonna jump into our next discussion prompt, which is, what are the signs that we are disconnected from ourselves, right? So she invites everyone to, as in this book, she says, I invite you to take a sacred pause and to check in with the silenced or the ignored parts of yourself. She says, I invite you to go within instead of letting others be your compass. Awaken your internal compass so that you can begin to know what you feel, think, need, want, and dream. The only way to change directions is to start by being honest with yourself about the ways that you have felt lost or disconnected or unfulfilled or stuck, right? And so she talks about basically these emotional signs of disconnection from home or from yourself, right? Internal signs of that disconnection are what she calls like a psychological homelessness, depression, anxiety, fear, resentment, envy, inability to experience joy, perfectionism, codependency, people pleasing. Like all of those are these internal signs of disconnection. External signs of disconnection would look like addiction, emotional eating, staying in a dead end situation that's unhealthy for you, settling, right? Being in an unhealthy relationship, self sabotaging, overworking, keeping yourself too busy, gossiping, creating drama, being in relationships that dishonor you. All of those are sort of these external signs of emotional disconnection from yourself. She says, once you acknowledge being disconnected from yourself, then you can begin to recognize all the ways that you've been distracted from this longing for home. And what she describes essentially are the ways that we distract ourselves. She says, with constant television watching, social media scrolling, pursuing other people, smoking, drinking, shopping, or even taking on extra projects to fill your time and focus. She says, as you come home to yourself, you release the need for perpetual external engagement so that you can sit with yourself and learn to enjoy your own company. And I know this is true for me. I also see this within my clients that when I am disconnected from myself, I am doing everything I can to distract myself. I'm staying busy. I'm in my perfectionism mode. I am focused on things that don't serve me, right? When I am disconnected from myself, I am in a constant, almost like state. I want to say meditative state, but it really is almost like a meditation. It's a state of being able to check in with myself and ask myself, what do I need in this moment? Right? Like, what do I need to care for myself? And then things are more fluid and things feel like they flow and there's just less resistance. So the last thing I want to just share before we jump into like what practices can we use to help us to come back home to ourselves, I want to share what are the things she says that get us disconnected, right? Where does this disconnection come from? And then what can we do? What are the specific things we can do to sort of get back on the path to reclaiming ourselves, right? So, and I'd love to hear from you, either through the replay or if you are watching this live, what gets you? So what are the things that actually you think are responsible for your moments of disconnection from yourself, right? So she describes stress as a major one. Stress, trauma, or any loss, right, may have led to distraction, to self-abandonment, to detachment from emotions, to emotional dysregulation when essentially we are, overreactive as opposed to responsive. Um, she says other things that can sort of cause that disconnection: feeling disappointment, feeling betrayal, right? Pressure, the demands of life, right? Sometimes do make it very difficult to make time for our emotions, right? Kizzy says stress and trauma. Totally. Thank you for sharing that, Kizzy. Um, I also want to add though, and one of the reasons I really appreciate where she's writing this book from, she has such a sort of perspective. She talks also about how poverty, discrimination, pervasive oppression, like these are sources of stress and trauma that create disconnection for many, many people. And she just has this sort of awareness, really that I appreciate in terms of understanding from like a different cultural lens, from just sort of different like ethnic backgrounds. What are the things that we need to pay attention to? She talks about how, oftentimes we people do experience sort of it based on how they're raised, right? Like often if we're raised to dismiss our feelings, whether that's based on our gender, our race, our religion, whatever the sort of culture is that we were raised in, sometimes that is we were taught to ignore or disconnect from or distract from our emotional experience, right? And that causes people to then distract themselves, to overwork, to really not pay attention to what they're needing, to diminish and minimize their own dreams and their hopes, right? And to sometimes stay in really unhealthy, either toxic relationships or toxic work environments, right? So all of those contribute to this sense of disconnection. And what I want to also just share about, because this was our fourth reflection prompt, was what are the three primary ways, or the three primary types of coping strategies to survive disconnection from the self, right? And she says the first one is which what we call emotion focused coping. Oh my gosh, Kizzy, you nailed it. Kizzy said, and it's a lot of work to undo it. 100%. It is, and that's why what I teach, and Kizzy, you know this firsthand from being in my program, that we want to be proactive and not reactive. Like when we have more tools in our tool belt, we can learn how to use some of these coping strategies so that we're not being as reactive to stress, but we can learn how to be more proactive to prevent the burnout, to catch ourselves in our perfectionistic moments or our codependent moments, right? So the three types of coping strategies are emotion focused coping, which is when we're essentially engaging in activities that soothe our hearts, that soothe our spirit. So this could be like journaling, this could be like talking to a friend, venting, right? And when you're using emotion focused coping, you are literally essentially reaching out to take care of your own emotional experience. Problem focused coping or problem solving coping is different. It's basically where we're doing something about the issue, the problem itself, to resolve it. So this may look like going directly to the source of that problem. So let's say if it's a person in our life, we go directly to that person and have a conversation with that person, as opposed to venting to our therapist or our coach or our friend or our parent or whoever it is, right? So those are two different ones. The last type of coping, which is the one that I think a lot of people use, is what's called distraction coping. And distraction in moderation can be healthy, right? Like certain amounts of distraction can be good for us, in order to avoid being overwhelmed. Like an example of that would be, like I tell my teenage clients who are bombarded with schoolwork and they're feeling really overwhelmed, it's healthy to come home and allow yourself to take a break, right? If you want to take like a 15, 20-minute break to watch a funny show or, watch a TikTok that makes you laugh, or like everything in moderation is okay. The issue is when we are perpetually distracting ourselves, right? So she says perpetual distracting is like numbing to the point of self-abandonment. Numbing yourself to your life is an indication of what she calls emotional homelessness. I love the way that she articulates that. And she says your inner self is calling you to create a life that you don't need to escape from or numb away, right? And that is literally what I teach. That is the whole idea of like creating our own internal paradise, is learning how to create a life that you don't need an escape from, that you're not numbing yourself from, right? Where you are in a perpetual state of connection to yourself, and that then allows you to feel more present and more connected to others, right? So I would love to hear, Kizzy, I would love to know for you, and anyone else who's watching, what are some of the types of coping strategies that you think you use to survive that disconnection from yourself? We all have moments of disconnection, right? What do you tend to do? Do you tend to talk to a friend? Do you tend to go directly to the source, right? Do you use distraction? What type of distraction do you use? I think it's important to acknowledge that. Many of my clients, in the work that we do together, they start out not necessarily being able to recognize the ways in which they are numbing themselves or distracting themselves. But as we start to get you closer and closer to coming back home to feel connected to yourself, as you start to speak your truth, it becomes a lot easier to then acknowledge what is true for you, and to acknowledge that maybe you are numbing yourself with that glass of wine or multiple glasses of wine every night, or smoking weed, or whatever the thing is. For some people, it's shopping or sex or, right, whatever. I mean, there's so many different ways that we try to escape. And so what I find is that my clients, as we work together, they actually, part of homecoming is beginning to own and acknowledge your own emotional experience, but also the ways in which you might be numbing that emotional experience or escaping or avoiding or distracting, right? So, Kizzy, you said you talked to a friend, but you have just started back to journaling. That's beautiful, right? And I'd love to hear, like, what does that do for you? How does that support you in your homecoming? I know that absolutely yeah, you nailed it. Kizzy, I love you. She said, because saying things out loud opens doors for judgment. Well, and that's true. It's hard to acknowledge it, but that's the beauty of journaling. That is the beauty of having a mentor or having a coach or a therapist or someone who you can speak openly to, even if it's just to yourself through your journaling. It allows you to acknowledge the truth. It allows you to speak your truth. And when we do that, we come home to ourselves. We feel more connected. We are, I mean, at some point, right? We can only run for so long. At some point, we have to face what is true for us. So what's been beautiful is that since starting the Women's Wellness Circle, I've had so many women reach out to me and just say, like, thank you for this space. Your space has been, even just this virtual space of our Women's Wellness Circle Facebook group has been like a reminder to come back home to themselves, to recognize and acknowledge the ways in which they've maybe been practicing some unhealthy coping strategies and the ways in which they want to come back to a healthier experience and a healthier life. So I want to talk next about that. I want to talk about what are the practices that will help me come back home to myself. That was our last reflection prompt. And it's beautiful because so much of what she shares is literally what I teach. And a big piece of those homecoming practices are about reparenting yourself. So there is a little bit in the book about sort of understanding, our attachment and our family of origin and what those relationships, how those impact us. What's beautiful too about the book is she shares so many case studies and stories so that you have like practical application of what she's talking about. But she says basically, in order to reparent yourself, in order to treat yourself and give yourself maybe what you did not receive as a child, you want to create opportunities and cultivate spaces for your joy to be unleashed, for your joy to come alive, right? And that can look like so many different things. I'll just be honest, for me, like this space has absolutely been a space that I've cultivated for my joy to be unleashed, right? That's also part of what prompted me to go back and sort of deepen my own yoga practice by becoming a yoga teacher, was that was me coming back home to myself after a really difficult breakup and feeling really disconnected from myself. This was back in like 2012, and it allowed my joy to come alive, right? So whatever that is for you, it doesn't have to be like a full-on program, but maybe it's just like going for a walk outside, right? What allows your joy to be unleashed? I would love for you to share in the comments of whether you're, again, watching live or catching the replay. She also says, creating structured routines for yourself and boundaries to protect your time. So whether that be like giving yourself a consistent bedtime, right? And that's a huge one, just to be honest. Like I try to get myself in bed by 10 every night. There are some nights it's 10:30, but for the most part, consistently, I try to maintain that 10 o'clock bedtime. That routine just helps me feel like it's more predictable. My life feels a little bit more kind of consistent and stable. And in that stability is safety, right? So creating structured routines and boundaries that protect your time and your energy. So that also may include like planning nutritious meals, like thinking about what you're feeding your body, staying hydrated regularly. This is a big one, regularly decluttering your life, right? Physically, like your space, but also emotionally. Like so much of what I do is help people to declutter their inner world so that there's then more spaciousness to be able to like be present with your joy, right? If our internal world is cluttered with all kinds of unhealed trauma, unhealed stuff, right? There's not a lot of space for that joy to come in. Yeah. So let's see. So the other thing she says is, as part of reparenting yourself, is seek help when you've lost sight of yourself. Reach out for that support, right? And so that, again, that can look like reach out to anyone, whoever is a safe person in your life. Reach out so that you have that support, that emotion-focused coping. She also says, as part of reparenting yourself, learning, and this is again part of what I teach, like learning how to hold emotional space for yourself and learning how to regulate your own emotions. So much of what I do and what I teach women and girls is learning how to literally hold space for yourself, being able to acknowledge and witness your own emotional experience, and to then be able to acknowledge it for yourself, share it with another person. Sometimes speaking it out loud is a part of that healing process, and learning how to regulate yourself so that you are not on this like emotional roller coaster, but instead can experience this like steadiness and ease and flow, and essentially being less reactive, right? Like we can sort of develop a little more state of calm within our body so that we can operate more from like the part of the brain, that prefrontal cortex that's responsible for planning, decision making, judgment, productivity, efficiency, like executive functioning, as opposed to being in our emotional brain, which is fear based, which is anxiety, which is a lot of the things that I see women struggling with, this anger, aggression, this overreacting. So when we talk about like going from being this like hot reactive mess to being sort of this calm, confident, conscious CEO of your life, that's what I'm talking about, is learning how to hold emotional space for yourself and regulate your own emotions. So a few more ideas, right? So those are some of her tips on reparenting yourself. She talks about also holding yourself accountable. That's a big one. So Kizzy, I love that you're journaling, right? So using whatever serves you to self-reflect. She says, hold yourself accountable through your own self-reflection and through your own learning, right? And so many of you have joined this Women's Wellness Circle as a space to continue your learning process, to support your mental health, to support your wellness, right? That's beautiful. She also says, write yourself a new script for self-care. Like, put your needs first and take care of your whole self, your mind, body, and spirit, right? She actually describes this as like, write a love letter to yourself. Imagine that. Write a love letter to yourself, because your wellness is worth preserving. And that's beautiful. I'm actually going to give you guys an exercise at the end of this live that sort of is similar to that idea of writing yourself a new script for self-care, writing yourself this love letter. She says, treat yourself with love, essentially, through your words and your actions. And that's a big one, right? So how do you speak to yourself? How do you advocate for yourself? Her whole thing is, notice how you're talking to yourself. Is it with love or is it with criticism? So many of the women I work with struggle with this self-criticism and these major limiting beliefs that kind of keep you stuck, right? Kizzy, you said it's you dealing with your own stuff, because that's really the only thing you can truly control. Totally. And you know what? That's very true. And I think a big piece is learning what is in our control, what's out of our control. The more that we start to like sort of tease that apart and like talk about it and understand it and give language to that, that allows us to actually be able to focus on what is in our control as opposed to all the things that are out of our control. And when we come back to what's in our control, generally that's calming, that reduces anxiety, that allows us to feel a little bit more connected to ourself when we focus on what is in our control versus out of our control. And that itself actually is a strategy for coming back home to yourself. But I'll just be honest, sort of talking about this idea of treating yourself with love through your words and actions, that was literally where my radical self-love affirmation cards were born, was because I found myself saying the same things over and over again to women as we were using and practicing this like conscious reframing. I just decided to create these affirmation cards so that women could have like a visual, tangible reminder that you can like put on your bathroom mirror, that you can put on your fridge, just see multiple times a day, pull a card each day, things that essentially allow you to practice radical self-love, to practice coming home to yourself, right? And so again, I love that you're still using them, Kizzy. And so that was the idea with this live, again, whoever is the most engaged, I'm going to send you my radical self-love affirmation cards for you to be able to come back home to yourself, use them as a tool. Now I wanted to, and yep, I know, Lorianne, but you're working on it and you're making great progress. A couple more practices though that I want to share. So she says, another practice to come home to yourself, and we were just talking, Kizzy, about journaling, right? But the idea of journaling about what do you want your inner self to know that you need emotionally, spiritually, physically, socially, materially. What are all these things so that you can reparent yourself? And again, I love her practice. At the end of each chapter, she says, place your hands over your heart, right? And advise your soul to tell your heart, your mind, your body, and your spirit, welcome home, right? How often do you stop throughout your day and reconnect to yourself, right? That alone is an elite embodiment technique. Just that. It's so simple. Closing your eyes, connecting to yourself, and really tuning in to say, welcome home, like allowing yourself to reconnect to body, mind, heart, spirit. It's so simple, but so beautiful, right? So Additionally, we want to be able to set boundaries. I was talking about this. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Kizzy said, I claim that for you and me both, Lori. And can I just say how beautiful it is? Like, Lori, you're here and you, I know, offered and gifted that book to Kizzy. Like, that was just such a beautiful way to support each other in your homecoming. I love that and appreciate that so much that you guys have just been supporting each other through this space. Um, so, setting boundaries, coming back to that, right? Like, that is a huge one that so many women struggle with, is learning how to say no, learning how to protect your time, your energy, your mental and physical health, your resources, right? Your spirit. That's a thing I spend a lot of time on within my Abounding Woman program. We dive right into that, but I think I also have a live on setting unapologetic boundaries. It's under the guide section of our Women's Wellness Circle. Um, she talks about too wanting to be patient with yourself as a tool, as a practice to come back home, to set a gentle pace for yourself and tell yourself the truth. Because so many of us are pushing, pushing, pushing. We're like trying to be productive. We're trying to get to this place and we're in this forcing energy. And I myself have been here. And that's part of what prompted me to take some time away from social media, was that I was just going, 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 going. And I wasn't making time for rest when my family was here visiting. It was in the excitement of it all. I just was not really practicing this like gentle pacing for myself, right? And it was really beautiful to set a boundary and to say, you know what, I'm going to take some time away from social media. I'm going to spend time with myself. I'm going to put my son back in school. I'm going to be present with my family, who I haven't really been with in 3 years because of the pandemic. It's been really beautiful. And as you are able to set a more gentle pace with yourself, you start to feel more present, more like you're coming home to yourself. And as part of that, right, we practice self-compassion. We allow ourselves to just place one hand on the heart, one hand on the belly, come home to yourself, right? She even suggests sort of like you can cross your arms, give yourself a hug, right? That even in and of itself is as a practice of self-compassion. She also talks about being, and I love this one, being really mindful of who you bring into your inner circle, your inner court. As some relationships that we have, right, bring us closer back to home. They help us almost like, and this is what I love, is conscious company that holds up a mirror, right? Literally, that holds up this mirror to us so that we are reflected back who we are, brings us closer to who we are, as opposed to relationships in our life that drive us further away from ourselves, right? So being mindful of who do we bring into our life? Who do we surround ourselves with? Is it conscious company, or is it people that take us further away from who we really are? Yeah. Um, okay, a few more. So she says you may need to deprogram yourself from this mindset that you are not worthy of time and care. And she says this is especially true for women, for people of color, for LGBTQ community members, for people with disabilities, and for individuals that are impoverished, that we often feel like we are not worthy of time and care. And I just, again, like, if you haven't read this book, I really encourage you to read that. She asks such thought-provoking questions. I'm going to share a couple of them with you now. She says, I invite you to consider, how long have you been numb or busy or distracted or disconnected, right? Has it been weeks, months, years, a lifetime? And she says, healing and coming home to yourself requires recognizing and reclaiming parts of yourself that you've left behind, right? So in what ways, she asks, have you sat on your own wings? In what ways have you minimized your voice or silenced yourself, right? When have you sought approval or validation or attention from other people who required you to be someone that you're not, right? And how did you, I know, Lorianne, and how did you maybe abandon yourself, whether that was in your relationships or in workspaces? What are ways that you have abandoned yourself? And that's a huge theme that runs throughout the book, is this idea of self-abandonment. That's how many of us sort of deal with that disconnection from self, right? It's not conscious. We're not consciously trying to, abandon ourselves, but we do it through these like distraction techniques, whether again, it's through alcohol or through mindless social media scrolling or through staying in unhealthy relationships or in an unhealthy toxic work environment or keeping ourselves in that go, go, go mode. I talked about that at the beginning of this live, all the ways we're disconnected from ourselves, right? And what she says is, look, you got to reorder your life. Like you have to reprioritize, including your expectations, your schedule, your friendships. Think about reordering your life to decrease your stress, and she really maps out how to do that. And the biggest strategy that I want to encourage you to do is to give yourself to take a sacred pause and surrender. That is literally the practice of elite embodiment, is learning how to take a sacred pause and surrender, to come home to yourself where you are right now. And she says, you can honor the sacredness of your life by choosing to show up in truth. You are worthy of care. You are deserving of love. You need nourishment, not only from others, but from yourself, right? And that you can choose to accept yourself even when there are aspects of you that you're working to improve, right? That is the whole idea of radical self-love. So, Lorianne, you said codependency, 100%. That is absolutely a thing that I see so many people, so many women struggling with, because that's how we were raised. We were raised with those beliefs, and we sort of believe that that's normal to be disconnected from ourselves in that way, and to rely on other people, to be codependent in this way where our emotional experience is somewhat based on their emotional experience, right? And so, Kizzy, you said breaking those chains, exactly. And learning how to break those chains is the key to elite embodiment, to coming home to yourself, right? So here's a homework that she gives towards the end of the book. She says, I want you to write a vow to yourself, similar to marriage vows, but this is written to you. This is like your own vow that you're making to yourself. And she says, what promises do you want to make to yourself going forward and for the rest of your life? Right? So Kizzy, like, how do you want to break those chains? Right? Lorianne, like, how do you want to shift that codependency? So maybe you want to commit to loving yourself in success or failure, or whatever the size or shape of your body, or whether you're in a relationship or you're single, whether you feel celebrated or rejected, right? Commit to loving yourself regardless of your external experience, your external circumstances. Commit, she says, to not erasing or abandoning yourself in pursuit of someone else's validation, someone else's attention or approval, to show yourself compassion, to vow really to forgive yourself, to reclaim your life, to reclaim your voice, and to love your mind, your body, and your heart, and your spirit, really, right? To allow yourself to like make this sacred vow to give yourself rest, to give yourself permission to be imperfect. Oh my gosh, that's a huge one. Give yourself permission to be imperfect and tired and overwhelmed and disappointed and frustrated, because that is part of the normal range of human experiences, right? But also allow yourself to be joyful and excited and loved, right? Lori, you said, I'm just going to read, you said, my therapist said to me, your value isn't tied into what you do for others or how others view you. I love that. And it's just repeated lesson to try to accept my value and not having my self-esteem tied to every other person's opinion. 100%. I'm also exhausted from being unhappy with myself and for being unhappy. I hear you. And that's a cycle you're struggling to let go of. Totally. You should read this book. Like this is, it's really beautiful. The last thing she says here about this vow, she says, vow to participate in the spiritual practice of recognizing the sacredness of this moment right now, in your present condition. Accept and celebrate yourself, who you are right now. And that's beautiful, because so many of us are in this like if then mentality of like, well, if only when this happens, then I'll, right? Like we're always looking to the future and saying, when X happens, then I'll be happy. When, this or this changes, then I'll be feeling whatever, then I'll be happy, then I'll be healthy, then I'll be joyful. No, she's saying, make a vow to yourself and be present with the sacredness of this moment right now. And for me, yes, Kizzy, like absolutely, you are light. And that was part of just recently for me, like my recent homecoming, of taking some time away from social media so that I could practice that more presence with myself and practice more present moment gratitude and awareness with my family, but really like with myself, like taking those beach walks by myself. That was huge. Just allowing myself to really reconnect to my own experience of being light, being loved, being like exactly who I am, loving my compassionate heart, right? Like all these various things that when I'm perpetually distracted, I really can't tune into. And so I encourage you to think about what practices would support your homecoming? And if this is speaking to you and you are longing to come home to yourself, drop homecoming in the comments below and I'll reach out and we'll connect and we'll chat and we'll just see what are you doing that's working for you and where can we fill the gaps, right? I'm happy to share about my embodied paradise method, how that works, how that may support you. It may not be for you, and that's okay too. There's no pressure, but ultimately, like my goal here is that I want to support the women in the circle and my clients with really like elevating to the elite version of yourself, with coming home to your highest and wisest self. That's the whole idea of this book of homecoming, and it is literally why I have become a coach. I've transitioned. I am still a therapist, but I also now have this coaching practice, and it's just so beautiful. And the embodied paradise method, really, the whole thing is about teaching these powerhouse women, such strong, incredible women, how to essentially like come back home to yourself through creating your own personal paradise, right? Learning essentially these techniques of like expansive regulation and experiential somatic soothing so that you can regulate your nervous system. That's the key. That's the huge part. You can then, that's sort of the body part, right? Then we sort of think about how do we start to identify and consciously reframe our limiting beliefs, whatever those are for you, right? And those are the things, those limiting beliefs are the things that keep us stuck and disconnected from ourselves, right? And then the last piece is, what are some elite embodiment practices that would support you on your homecoming journey? Right. And that's what I would love to share with you. So Lorianne, Kizzy, I will totally reach out. I want to connect and find some ways for you to feel more of that radical self-love and give you some practices to create more of that like authentic presence and fulfillment and meaning in your daily experience. And my goal again is to help you to embody your elite potential, to help you to go from being that like feeling like a hot reactive mess to feeling like this calm, conscious, confident CEO of your life and your business, right? So if that resonates with you, drop homecoming in the comments if you're watching it live, or if you are catching the replay, and I will reach out and we can connect. And I'm just grateful to be here with you guys and to be able to share this. So again, if you haven't gotten this book or you haven't had a chance to read it, check out Homecoming by Dr. Thema Bryant. And I just appreciate everybody being here today. Our next book, I'm also incredibly excited about. I'm going to be sharing about that. I think it's tomorrow. So that is coming for our October Mental Health Book Club book. And I hope you guys have a really beautiful day. I'm going to get going here so I can spend a little bit of time with my family. They leave today. But I just appreciate being here with all of you. So thanks everybody for your time and hope to connect with you soon. All right, aloha.